So this segment is about math, and people cringe when I say that weaving has math, but it's going to save you heartache and disappointment later on. And it's really simple math. It can be cursory. You can, just get a good idea of what you're going to need. You don't have to be too attached to it, but if you do the math, you're going to have better results. So weaving is not flat. It's three-dimensional. If you only have so much yarn, you're going to want to make sure that you're going to be able to use all of it. If this flat piece of paper is this length, and then you have to account for the over, under, over, under, over, under. And if you look at this piece of paper, it shows that it's much shorter than the flat piece. And that's kind of where the math comes in, is we're going to compensate for this. The other thing you have to remember is that your yarn, when it's on the loom, is under tension. And so you kind of have to figure that out too. You have to compensate for that too. So if your yarn is under tension and it's this long, when you take it off the loom, it's only that long. So you're going from this to this. So if you want to make sure that you have the length piece that you want, you need to take this into account. And we have a math sheet for you to plug those numbers in, and we're going to fill that out. I like to have a name for my project. You can post your projects up on Ravelry, and so if you give them a name, you can put a picture. So this is our Yowza scarf. And there's a place for notes, and you might want to make note of what colors you used, and what yarn you used. So we had rainforest and hops. So the first part that you need to worry about is warp. The general rule is that you need slightly less weft than you do warp. So if you figure out your warp and you've got about that amount left over for weft, you can complete your project. So our desired width on this project was 8 inches. And then you need to add 10% for draw-in, because again, the over-under nature of the weaving draws in. And when you're talking about drawing, you're talking about width. So you're going to add 10% and round up. So we've got 8.8, and that's going to round up to 9 inches in the reed. And that's why we warped 90 ends. So we're 9 inches in a 10 dent heddle is 90 ends, and that's where we got that figure. So that gives you your loom, your width in the loom, and you're going to multiply that by 10, because that's your set, that's your ends per inch, and that's going to give you 90 ends. And that's what we did. So then we're going to move to length, and our desired length was 72 inches. And again, we're going to add 10% for take up, and take up is the length that it shrinks back to, taking into account the loom tension, the stretch for the loom, and also the over, under nature of the weaving. So we're again going to add 10% to that, and that gives us 79.2. And we're going to round that up to 80 inches. Then we're going to add our requirements for how much it takes to tie on, and also the fringe length that you want to have. So calculating, 6 inches for tying on and 8 inches for fringe on either end. And so we came up with a figure of you need about 20 inches to accommodate all of those things. So your total warp length is going to be 80 plus 20 is 100 inches. And that's what we warped. And because we don't sell yarn in inches, we're going to multiply A times B, and we're going to divide by 36 for yards. And we get 250 yards. And that's how much you need for warp. So you need slightly less for weft. And one of the other numbers that you need to be aware of is that you need to take the number of ends and divide it in half, and that's the number of slots that you're going to warp during your direct warp. So 90 divided by 2 is 45. And that's really all the math you need to do.